Global capability centers have evolved and moved up the value chain, from providers of low-cost routine services to centers of excellence for advanced digital capabilities. India is home to over 1,300 GCCs, which generate a revenue of over $33.8 billion. To understand key opportunities and challenges in this landscape, we bring you a highlight from the Economic Times GCC Transformation Series powered by Thomson Reuters, wherein industry experts share their views on how GCCs are owning processes end-to-end, thereby creating more value for parent companies and broadening the scope for growth.
Welcome to this Leadership Roundtable by Thomson Reuters and the Economic Times. The theme for today's conversation is how finance GCCs are becoming value-driving business enablers. Companies too have realized the business and strategic importance of running shared services out of India. And within finance, we are increasingly hearing of centralized, high-impact functions like compliance or tax-based processes moving to India. India is currently home to about 1,400 GCCs, and this is predicted to grow to between 1,600 and 1,900 between 2025, with about 100 more coming up in 2022 alone. David, I'd like to start with asking you a question, though.
Sure.
So there is this increasing trends for GCC to move up the value curve and deliver specialized, focused capabilities. Now, how do finance GCC leaders really envisage the scale-up journey towards delivering specialized services?
For Thomson Reuters, we've had a look at various markets and various organisations and trends that are taking place across the region. And for us, the GCC environment in the context of India is an incredibly exciting opportunity to be partnering with leaders and organisations such as yourselves. And that's being driven by many of the trends and the themes that were touched on as part of the introduction. So when we're speaking with clients and when we're looking at the value that we're hoping to bring to these organisations, it is around a far more aspirational expectation of the value that GCCs can bring in the context of their organisations. And so by aspirations, I'm talking about best practice thought leadership, I'm talking about innovation, I'm talking automation that you touched on there, and the role that technology and strategic partners can play as part of that ongoing evolution of GCC value add in the context of many multinational organisations. So we actually find that when we're working with leaders and organisations, the business case is now transformed from cost efficiencies and looking at how labour models can create efficiencies within businesses to now, well, what can the GCC bring to the table that's going to help create value add and differentiation in many examples for the organisation broadly and more globally. And so then that creates opportunities to work through, okay, well, what do business cases look like for the investment? How do you price risk into a business to really make sure that, through automation, through technology solutions, efficiencies again, not just from a commercial perspective, but from a branding perspective, from a differentiation perspective, in terms of the markets that these businesses work in. And it's an exciting time.
Thanks, David. I'll open this question to, whoever wants to take it. But global capability centers are building on a solid foundation that they've kind of put in place over these years and moving towards becoming centers of strategic importance, kind of moving from back office to becoming the backbone of the enterprise. What is your strategy to deliver business value and impact and strengthen your center in terms of scope expansion?
See, I think, so far we've focused on how the business processes have been outsourced or, even how my team is right now supporting the subsidiaries. But if you look at the end-to-end solution and also beyond going just the transaction processing, if we look at some value adds there, for example, the challenges that we faced from moving from purchase requisition to purchase order to payment, if a simple process that can give a value add to give, how the entire flow has happened with the right authority matrix as to who has authorized at what levels, and if it can give a control gaps, or it can then facilitate the internal audit automatically, because then it can throw up the control gaps right in when the transaction processing is happening, and that will facilitate the delivery centers, I think, much more, and the leaders who are on the other side can get a value add. So when you're running a business process transaction, if you're able to highlight the control lapses which can enable the leaders on the other side to identify those control lapses and also facilitate how the mitigating and preventive controls can be implemented, that will be a great value add, I believe, and that can deliver value to the CFOs.
I think to just build on what you said, we've definitely been able to put in place a lot more controls. To start with, one of the things that when we started off, of course, cost optimization was one of the drivers, but more importantly, we also started focusing on other value adds, and controls was one. And or rather, I would say we're not there yet, but we attempted to achieve that by process standardization. Apart from that, I think the other value add, as we said, is when we consolidated all the work at one place, we were able to bring in more automation and bring in more efficiency through that. In fact, one of the things that we did is we managed the statutory reporting for pretty much the entire Asia Pacific region out of India, and we're using an application that Thomson Reuters supports us from. I don't think we would have been able to make that investment if we were to do it out of 20 different locations. And today the financial statements, whether I need to prepare it for an entity in the Middle East or for Singapore or wherever else, it's kind of done out of one application sitting in India. So that was one of the advantages that we were able to bring in here.
How is your finance GCC advancing its maturity to become a business value driver for the organization?
In our own, journey of maturity curve, we started off as a resource center, right? You just put in people, build the scale so that the execution can happen. Moved into the phase of, okay, we are executing, and then what is the benefit that the parent organization is getting is the quality of service, right? And then, I think the paradigm shift has happened from being a, cost arbitrage, labor arbitrage kind of a location to a value provider. Now, a couple of things that we have done in this particular space is, looking at the process end to end, reducing the process proliferation. When there is scale, then we are looking at, okay, you have transitioned, let's standardize. Once the process is standardized, is there an opportunity of automation? So the move is, instead of having bespoke processes, look at the end-to-end picture. What is the automation opportunity and the analytic solution that we can provide? So that's how we are working upon the
Amol, would you like to tell us what you're...
Yeah, what we achieved there is like statutory accounting, consolidations, and also we have put global internal audit team. So the benefit of that is like the audit team sitting at Pune location or from India location, evaluating all the, basically I was working for US company, so all the SOX designing deficiencies and working for all across entities to designing, then rectification and then testing of all those SOX. So audit team also able to put up some better controls on that. Apart from that, when we were doing stat accounting, so can you imagine the team sitting from Pune location doing all stat accounting and stat audit filing across the globe? So that we have achieved while I was working for FIS SunGuard, the software IT company.
Meenal, in the last few years, what are some of the additional finance activities that have been, moved to the center in India? And also, what's next on the agenda for you now?
A lot of financial acumen and technical acumen has been developed as a capability in our centers. Now, what we are trying to see is how can this benefit the business? So we partner with the business. So our strategy is we globalize a process, make it standard. However, we still remain local where business support is required, because we are in a market which is very, very, dependent on the local environment conditions, weather, farmer situations, soil conditions. So with this, it was very clear as an approach, and that's where we insourced about 500 roles from Capgemini in 2017-18, so that we have the end-to-end process ownership. And so we are now working on how we take a one use case scenario, completely develop a solution end-to-end, whether it is about technology, awareness, education, capability, or even awareness in the organization of how to request for materials. Now, as a process, like I said, one thing we changed in the last 3 years was creating end-to-end process ownerships. in the centers. And then we localize solutions based on stat requirements, taxation. Brazil could be a different scenario for us. So we create local solutions because we, as I said, we have a lot of empowered business decision making. And how do we enable the business to be really agile in its solutioning, at the same time keeping the controls and the thread of the strategy intact?
So it's really interesting how over time GCCs have moved themselves from a source of value to a real source of leadership. And from simple processes right up the sort of knowledge value curve, with us seeing a lot of more complex processing like tax and treasury now happening in the GCC environment, and something really excited to see at Thomson Reuters in terms of the value that it creates for us and our customers.
Great session today. Heard a lot of very different perspectives. A couple of things that really resonated with me is around really looking at how we get the talent up the talent maturity curve. How do we really train people to take global ownership and really look at business impact and outcomes? The other piece that really came out very interestingly is managing different types of people, especially the millennials, a lot more differently. And I think it's more about a question of perspective and mindset that really brings about the change.
I think GCCs have come a long way, and I think it's no longer a cost plus model, right? So we are adding a lot of value to the business, and I think it's no longer that the adverse transfer pricing which is creating the issue out over here. It's about providing solutions to the business, being innovative, and the using of the talent we have in India or in the global capability centers to transform our processes, right? We have a very unique advantage. India is at the cusp of, transforming our talent out over here, and we have a good, abundant talent which we could use for, driving growth for the business, adding value, and being more at the forefront of decision making. So I'm really excited about the opportunities India bring. Opportunities the global capability centers bring beyond the cost arbitrage, right? And it's I think the discussion has moved beyond that at this point of time.
Thomson Reuters has always had a global and strategic view of global capability centers. Our GCCs have been in India for over 20 years, and we're continually building more leadership on site, putting more decision making and more accountability. We also have very sophisticated talent management strategies in place to grow the capabilities and the team.
I think GCCs ought to move from being capacity centers to capability centers, and more importantly actually being a knowledge centers, so effectively no longer GCCs but GKCs. The more important thing for also them too is they need to make sure that their talent is ready for that change. From what you do as a capacity center and what kind of talent you need for that is very, very different if you have to be a knowledge center and have a table stake with the CXOs of the organization. So that is something that GKCs need to focus on.
So I think one of the most important things for the GCCs to think about when we look at transformation is to move away from only thinking about how we can improve processes, how we can transform what we do, but shift towards what is business transformation and what does it mean for the business, and how we can transform and do more or do things differently rather than just do things better, and make a bigger impact on where the value lies for the business, not just sort of improving and being incremental about transformation. So the transformation has to be really something which adds to the the overall growth of the organization or the bottom line of the organization, and just not makes it a little more efficient. I think that's the most important aspect.
David, I'd like to come back to you. What, in your opinion, is needed to seamlessly transition complex value-added processes to GCCs?
I think part of the nature of those complexity and challenges is we're dealing with such a breadth of leaders and stakeholders across our organisation. And in this particular context, many of those leaders are going to be operating outside of the region that we're talking about here. And so the ability to garner support and influence those leaders is critically important. And then I think that there's some components within the direction that's being headed and what that objective looks like that are important. And so talent in the context of the market here and our businesses is obviously at the forefront of our thinking at this particular point. So how do we attract top talent? How do we have a culture that is driving in the direction that we would like to have our organisation head towards? And beyond attracting talent, how do we retain our top talent to play a key role longer term in the vision and the objectives that we're carrying? And then beyond the talent side of things, what can technology do in terms of automation and standardization and efficiency gains? So that's really where I think we see the largest potential, is making sure that stakeholders collectively buy into the purpose and the vision, and then we've got the right strategies around technology and talent to complement that vision.
And anyone else wants to talk about the kind of challenges that you're facing on this journey and what you're doing to kind of work through it?
So no, I think, David, you touched upon talent. I think that's the biggest challenge, at least in this current
At this point in
environment.
time,
Yes, yes.
It's just crazy the way, I'm sure all of us in a hiring mode.
Yes.
Constantly in a hiring mode because people are taking offers and then going around shopping. For
The
and then
regulations
last minute
speak.
dropouts. No matter how many backups you have in place, it's the behavior of the candidates has changed a lot. And there are organizations who are also skewing up the whole compensation,
Yes.
spectrum. Again, the other thing that we are seeing with the talent space is the amount of flexibility that is expected out of the millennials. They're going to be the biggest workforce, eventually. The growth, I think, people are looking at every 2 years, they would want to grow, do different things.
Right.
So the whole engagement model for all of us I think has to be reworked.
No, and building on that, right? What I'd say is that if I think about GCCs in the past, right, I remember when I was a CFO for the ops centers in Bangalore and Hyderabad for PR, the talent was fairly muted, right? It was like, okay, I'm doing this AP work and I'll do that for the next 5 years. I'm totally okay, and I think that's completely changed. And but also the fact is that in terms of retention, right? You talked about that. When I speak to some of the leaders here, I think technology and kind of how you're using ML and AI and kind of the latest is becoming a huge part of that retention aspect, because no one wants to do the same job for multiple years.
Right.
And I feel that's kind of that journey to kind of ensure that you build in that aspect of how you're going to make a really fruitful experience around that entire journey, as opposed to just one person doing kind of processing
Right.
invoices for the next 3 years, is going to be really important.
Just on the challenges, I kind of relate to whatever you said on offer drops and talent and all of that. But apart from that, I think another challenge that we face, and maybe because we as an organization we are a little conservative, is the resistance to actually move work to us. And it's internal, mind you. So there is a lot of resistance. I don't know whether you all experienced the same thing. It's taken us a while to get to where we are today.
Right, definitely. Talent is, one which is the foundation of everything, because all the business strategies that we have created rest upon having the capabilities for a longer term.
I think understanding the business model, even at the transaction processing, is the key. I think beyond moving ahead, talent as a challenge, I would say changing of mindsets and how to bring in this overall culture of excellence to drive the new initiatives, I think is the key.
So, what are some of the other systems, that people around here have either implemented or you're looking at bringing in to focus on, say, compliance issues, tax reporting, and so on?
As far as my experience is, whenever we are implementing any ERPs, I would find personally myself, India becomes very tough and challenging country to accommodate all the compliance requirements to accommodate into that ERP, and always it's outside of the ERP and Excel spreadsheets. So, and similar challenges I'm finding alpha level, because I've started here my journey from India, and India is the last destination whenever I have done all the transition and transformation. So that is the challenge.
Well, I think what Meenal touched on, right, is a situation which we see across a lot of organizations, right, having multiple different acquisitions, multiple different ERP instances.
Yes.
You know, we at TR itself, we used to have like multiple different instances of an ERP, and we would customize it so much that we couldn't even recognize it. And even the organization we bought it from couldn't recognize it, right? Like that's kind of the norm, and I feel like in terms of what systems you talked about, right? I think there's a say 5-8 years ago, the whole mindset was that everything needs to be within an ERP. It cannot one system and one system alone, and I think that's completely dismantled now.
Right.
There's a very clear mandate that, listen, we want to keep the ERP clean, and let's talk about a tax engine now. Let's talk about an HR system, which is a special system which connects into the ERP.
David, any closing thoughts, closing comments?
Look, I mean, I think for us, it's an exciting opportunity to continue to substantiate how we can partner with you and innovate and add value for your organisation. So we're now really wanting to evolve ourselves into an innovative thought leader that really works with yourselves to take that next step and continue to find the path to continued growth and success.
It was a really interesting conversation. So yeah, thanks everyone.
We need to continue to invest in growing our domain knowledge and our business knowledge, because we've reached a point now, we've become big, right? A large chunk of our key operations and technology work happens here. So now we need to demonstrate that we have not just the amount of work that we do, but we also equal amount of domain expertise, business expertise. We understand the customer, and we have customer intimacy. So investing in that, I think, is the most crucial thing that we could do. And as we do that, we will be in a better position to be in decision-making roles here in our GCCs, to take on more responsibility, to take on more accountability. So that would be my key suggestion on what we need to invest on, and that's what we're focusing on within Thomson Reuters in our GCCs, is to invest in our business domain, customer intimacy, and increase our ability to get into decision-making roles.
Now, as GCCs are looking to sort of move up the value chain, I think the primary point of focus for them is to be able to clearly define the sense of purpose that they should sort of establish for, one is the organization, for the enterprise, as well as for the organization here, as well as define the sense of purpose for each of their team members, right from attracting the right kind of talent to developing it and building it, to ensuring that they've got what they need. I think that's going to be fundamental as GCCs look to kind of scale up and add more value to the enterprise.
I think in terms of the topic was knowledge-based processes, and that's what we were really focusing on. What came out very distinctly, right, is that talent is kind of at the core of everything. And what I'd say is one of the panelists kind of took that topic a little further, talking about talent, technology, and transformation, the 3 T's, right? And I feel like that's really a combination of talent, of how we're kind of promoting talent, how the talent is maturing, and how we are empowering them with technology. And I kind of gave this example of one global Indian headquartered company, CFO, looking at CVs, and the CV is not just about kind of how many audits they've done for a stat reporting role, but it's also about what technology kind of experience they have, what's kind of their skill sets around merging technology with their core function, as opposed to just about what's their domain expertise. And I think that's kind of that combination of talent and technology, which is empowering and really kind of taking further the transformation journey, is what was, in my opinion, the key takeaway from the roundtable.